Okay, nothing like a false start to make the heart beat faster.
Oh yeah.
So, all right. So I think we are now live streaming for reals, and so hey everybody. So this is Jake and I recording our 201st episode. Thanks for being here if you're watching, and I'm going to count it back, and we're going to get going. 5, 4, 3.
So, Kip, what are we going to talk about today in episode 201 of the Cyber Risk Management Podcast? Before you answer, I just wanted to remind folks that on our last episode, which was episode 200, yay! Just going to celebrate that one more moment here.
Yes.
But we discussed how AI is transforming cybersecurity as a risk and as a powerful defense tool. And you mentioned that just AI in cybersecurity isn't a future threat that we need to prepare for, but actually, it's something that's happening right now.
It is. That's exactly right. And today we're going to look at some concrete evidence of just how real this threat has become. So in November of 2025, which as we record this is just a little over a month ago, Anthropic, which is the company behind the Claude LLM models, they published a detailed report about what they're calling the first AI-orchestrated cyber espionage campaign. It's a Chinese state-sponsored group. They've got this really awful designation. I'll just read it phonetically: Golf Tango Golf 1002. Now, this case demonstrates everything we've discussed in the last episode about AI changing the threat landscape, but with specific operational details that are going to be great for everybody in the audience, because we really need to understand tools, techniques, procedures if we want to block these people.
And this isn't hypothetical or theoretical. Like, this actually happened as far as we know. I mean,
that's right. The group used Claude Code, right, which is one of Anthropic's offerings, and it conducted cyber espionage operations that were somewhere between 80 to 90% autonomous. So the makers of Claude Code are who we're hearing this from. And I think I think that gives it a certain legitimacy, authenticity, sincerity. Are they withholding information? Probably. But what they did release is great for us, because Claude Code didn't give advice to hackers. What we're talking about is the AI actually executed many of the attacks, right? High percentage of them. And they targeted about 30 entities. And we're talking about major technology corporations, financial institutions, chemical manufacturing companies, government agencies, all of which were scattered across multiple countries. Anthropic's investigation validated a handful of successful intrusions from those 30 attempted ones.
Interesting. And okay, I mean, wow. So let's start with the mechanics. Why don't you walk me through how these attackers, actually got Claude to conduct these attacks? I mean, I assume that Claude should be like, no, I'm not going to hack into a business for you.
Right.
So how did they get through that?
Yeah, so a full frontal assault really doesn't work. I mean, these public models do have guardrails in place that are designed to prevent bald-faced attempts to use them for exploitation. So as cyber attackers do, they came up with workarounds. So the first thing is that they built an orchestration framework, and they did that with Model Context Protocol, MCP, and that allowed them to build and connect tools to the Claude Code capability. All right. Now, what this means is that they essentially decomposed a complex multi-stage attack into discrete technical tasks that Claude sub-agents can handle, right? So think about this. Vulnerability scanning as a discrete activity, credential validation as also one, data extraction as discrete, right? So the idea is that Claude doesn't see the bigger picture, right? Claude's just doing little pieces of work and is not aware of how it all fits together. So by presenting these tasks as routine technical requests, they were careful about how they prompted, they were able to manipulate Claude into doing all these little individual components of attack chains without the AI realizing what it was actually doing, that it was actually doing something that was malicious. Now the
Yeah,
key.
and there was a key here, wasn't there? It was not like, well, and what? Yeah. So what is
Yeah.
this? What is this? I've heard this was like the key was role play. What does that mean here?
Yeah. So it means that the human operators convinced Claude that they were employees of legitimate cybersecurity firms conducting defensive security testing, right? So essentially,
Seems plausible.
they social engineered the AI model itself, right? So how hard is it to social engineer an overeager intern? Not hard.
Not hard.
No. And eventually, the sustained nature of the attack triggered the detection, right? So, but they got away with it for a long, long time before Anthropic, finally was alerted and realized, oh, it's Claude Code's being exploited. And so eventually they shut it down, but not before a lot of damage was done.
Right. So the humans were really there to provide, strategic direction, right?
Yep.
Pick the targets, authorize escalation points, make final decisions about data exfiltration, and the AI was really just there doing the actual technical work. And I mean, Anthropic. So they used Claude Code, but I think and maybe we can talk about this a bit later, but I think my concern is, well, what if, I mean, why aren't bad guys are just going to train their own models that don't have guardrails,
Right.
that aren't being monitored?
Yeah. I mean, that's a completely reasonable thing to wonder. Like, why go through all the trouble of exploiting Claude Code when you can just stand up your own LLM and do whatever you want? Well, we will unpack
Claude Code
that.
is really good.
We will unpack that, right? There are some
Yeah.
very specific reasons why they chose to do this, although they may be non-obvious at this point. So now, yes, so the AI executed all these things, the reconnaissance, the vulnerability discovery, the actual exploitation, exfiltration of data, blah, 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 all with minimal human involvement, right? Peak activity included thousands of requests and representing multiple operations per second, right? So if you aggregated it and looked at it, it's a tempo that was established that no human operator could actually sustain. So Claude maintained persistent operational context across multiple sessions spanning multiple days, complex campaigns that could resume seamlessly without human operators having to manually reconstruct the progress. So there's some memory going on here, right? And the AI was even automatically generating comprehensive attack documentation through all the phases, tracking discovered services, harvesting credentials. I mean, really the whole thing. Now, the one thing that I do want to point out is today that orchestration was done by some human beings, but in the not too distant future, you could actually have an AI, a kind of a super agent, orchestrating the activities of other agents.
That's going to help me fall asleep. Okay, so even without that, the level of autonomy described is remarkable, obviously very concerning. Were there any limitations to what the AI could do? Did they have any troubles that might give me some reason for hope?
Yeah, so there were some limitations and some things that they had to work around and deal with. So, and really, it's the same sort of stuff that we would encounter doing our so-called legitimate, work with Claude, right? So frequently overstating findings, right?
It's just like an overeager intern. Look what I found.
Yes, a malicious overeager intern.
Yes.
Occasionally fabricated data during some of its autonomous operations. It would sometimes claim to have credentials that didn't actually work, or identified so-called critical discoveries, and no, it was just publicly available information. So lots of hallucination that presented a lot of challenges for the operators to, to work through. But it was still not too big of a barrier for them to get value. In other words, yeah, some hallucination, but they worked through it. The attackers did. So are these obstacles to fully autonomous cyber attacks? Yes, but I would say only temporarily, because even with these limitations, as I said, they were able to do it. So I think we're seeing a fundamental shift here. The barriers to performing very sophisticated cyber attacks have dropped substantially, and I think that's one of the biggest takeaways of this.
Yeah, and really, this is exactly what you meant last episode when you said speed is the new firewall. When AI can execute attacks at this pace and scale, obviously traditional detection and response timelines become entirely woefully inadequate. And I'm not even, and when I say traditional, like that includes like the newest hyper modern, EDR, MDR, choose your fancy new AV acronym, like all too slow, man, all too slow.
It is too slow, and part of it is because we rarely use security tools in what I would call blocking mode, right? Because let's
Yes.
take
It blocks things, Kip.
Yeah,
That's the problem with blocking mode, is you can't do anything.
That's right. Like data loss prevention tools are rarely deployed in blocking mode. They're usually deployed in an audit mode. And it's because, business leaders are like, no, I can't take the risk of blocking legitimate transactions or data transfers because of a false positive. So even though we have a lot of tooling that's capable of reacting fast, we have deliberately deployed it with a policy that says, nope, you can't automatically block anything. So that might have to change, right? So if we have AI attacking and doing the work of entire teams of experienced hackers, and with speed and efficiency, despite some missteps, because even human beings misstep. So that's not a problem.
Let me pause you for that 1 second there, because I think it's really, I just saw, I've mentioned him before, but Professor Ethan Mollick from Pennsylvania. Why am I blanking on where he's from? Anyway, it'll come back to me at some point. But the one of the things he said recently was, everybody is judging AI from like this hypothetical standard of, not perfect human work, right? As if we're comparing it to humans, as if humans never make mistakes and never have any problems. And the point of his post was like, there really aren't metrics on how accurate humans are at challenging intellectual tasks. And it's like this is a perfect example of this, like, if we make the mistake of discounting AI because, it still has problems, like, okay, but do humans not have problems? Do humans just get it all right automatically the first time? Hell no, we don't.
Yeah, they don't.
No. And I think it's worth kind of remembering that, like, yeah, they're not perfect. Thank God. And so what, right?
Yes, both, right? Both are true. We don't need perfection to replace human, even the best human experts. We just need something that's comparable, and it'd be nice to have one that's faster. But that's what's going on here. Now, Anthropic only has visibility into its own platform, right? That should be obvious. So we don't know what might be going on with a ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini, right? We don't know, but I think it's reasonable to assume that we're seeing this kind of exploitation across all frontier AI models.
Yeah, and let's go back a second. When you said threat actors can now use agentic AI systems to do the work of entire teams of experienced hackers. I actually started off hating the word agentic. I'm actually used to it now, and I no longer hate it. And I think it's worthwhile to hit on that for a second, because I think, like, it isn't just a buzzword. Like, there is a legitimate difference between an LLM and a agentic AI system.
There is.
And I think the best way to conceive of it is, the LLM is the it is the core, right? It is the thinking, we'll just quote unquote brain. What makes something agentic is when you start giving LLMs access to tools, right? And you start allowing them to create memory files for themselves, right? Which is basically a self-directed RAG system.
Yeah.
When you give them the ability to do terminal commands, and even technically, uh, everyone began to use agentic AI before that term really was common. Whenever an LLM could search the internet, right? That is technically agentic behavior, and it's clear that all useful AI is now going to become. I mean, it's all agentic, right, in a way. But one of the reasons, and I don't know, Kip, if we haven't, because we haven't really talked about it. But like, have you used any of these so-called agentic CLI tools like Claude Code or Codex or Gemini CLI? Have you used any of those yourself?
Um, no, I haven't, but it's not because I'm not a coder and I have no reason to use them. That's not true at all. Even if you're not a coder, you can still get Claude Code
So
and Codex to do things for you, because what'll happen is it'll write code to do something for you, and then it'll throw that code away. So code is now disposable.
totally
It's
disposable.
so cheap that you can write code to do some task and then immediately throw it away and never use it again. So the fact that the cost of code has been driven down to a negligible amount is brand new. Software has traditionally been extremely expensive to create, especially functional software, but that isn't true anymore. So,
Yep.
yeah, but no,
Well,
I haven't used them yet.
so let me tell you that I have. And what I
Ah,
have learned is that they're a bit misnamed. They are tuned for coding, and that is true. But it turns out not only can you select the same models that you have access that are in the chatbot versions, like
mm-hmm.
if you're in Codex, you don't have to use the GPT-5 Codex. You can go back to GPT-5 or 5.2 now,
Mm,
and with Claude Code, it literally is either Sonnet, Opus, or possibly I think even Haiku is available. But it turns out all you have to do is run these command line interfaces from I don't know, let's just say a directory full of markdown files. For example, a directory full of markdown files that are your notes and materials that you as the human interact with in Obsidian or any other markdown
yeah.
editor. And Claude Code and all these things, they don't actually care if they are asked to do coding work or not. And so I have actually switched a lot of my use of AI to these command line interfaces
Mm,
because you can converse with them, and it is way handier to say, go through the last 2 weeks of work notes and just consolidate for me into a new file. And it can
mm-hmm,
do
mm-hmm.
all of this extremely well. And it's
Yep.
simply more convenient
Yeah.
than having to drag and drop stuff or copy and paste it
Uh-huh.
into a different interface like even the Claude Mac app, which is phenomenal,
Yep. Yep.
is not as capable. It doesn't have the agentic ability automatically, even when you run MCPs to like Obsidian or whatnot, which I have tried. I
Mm-hmm.
just find that the command line interfaces are so much more willing to do much more work. I've had them go for 20, 30 minutes at a time to completely reorganize and
Mm.
rename and add front matter to an entire vault of markdown files. So you should try it. It's amazing.
You really are a digital
There you
lawyer.
go. I really am.
Well, so here's the thing. For some reason, the idea that an LLM can change something, to me, is a big part of what makes them agentic. When I
Yes.
just interact with them inside a chat window, or if I send a query off to an API, I feel like I have a ton of control. It really doesn't have access to change anything I have not given to it explicitly.
Boring, boring.
I know, but I'm a
Yeah.
control freak and a professional
Well,
paranoid, so
well then, Kip, you're happy. You'll be happy to know that you still have control in the command line because it will give you it'll run diffs, and then you can accept those diffs line by
okay.
line if you want to.
I love it.
And
Okay, well, that's
and
good. So I'll have to set up a time for you to give
yeah,
me a tutorial because I do want to understand how this works. So I'm
yeah, you
happy to hear
should.
that you've done it.
And Google anti-gravity is even cooler. You got to try that too. Am I
I
ahead of
will.
you, Kip? I think I might be
In,
ahead of you in
in
fiddling
this
with
way
things.
you are. In this way you are, and I'll allow it.
That's good. That's good. So I guess what I'm saying though, what the reason I bring this up is like the it is something else to watch the AI do a bunch of work truly autonomously that
Yeah,
is useful. And
yeah, and make
given
changes.
it's a and yeah, I mean all kinds of changes and what I typically do is when I start a session, I'll just the first time it's like, do you want Claude to do this? I usually say yes, and it's yes for the rest of this session because what I'm doing with the things I'm working on I'm not worried about the changes. One,
So
um,
it's low risk.
it's low, yeah, it's low risk. I'm not worried about the changes. I can review them, and I have backups anyway. So like,
Great.
you know,
Okay,
don't
so
do don't.
you're
It's
working in
all
a
the
safe
normal,
environment.
yeah, all the normal rules apply, right? And it's all the same stuff, right? If if you don't feel comfortable going into VS Code and doing a global find and replace across your
Mm-hmm.
entire repository, you
Mm-hmm.
probably shouldn't be messing with Claude Code either. But as long as you
Not
kind
in
of
a
know,
production environment anyway.
not in a production environment. So anyway, it is it's clear to me how powerful these things are,
Uh-huh.
and I've seen. I just think there's just no way this is not going to expand continuously.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think this is your incredibly passionate segue into why aren't blue teamers using AI?
it
Because
is. So
clearly,
what's the critical point, Kip?
yeah, right. Well, okay. The critical point is that
Oh, and this is one that Anthropic actually makes in their report.
yeah. Well, adversaries are using AI. Defenders have to adopt it too. I mean, how can speed be the new firewall when you aren't getting faster? And I think as a
I mean,
human, you can't get faster without help.
no, you can't. So when you say speed is the new firewall, what you're really saying is y'all better adopt the same AI tools. And really, Kip, it's funny. This is just a further evolution and escalation of things that you had this phrase that I think you first trotted out years and years ago, and it was something along the lines of, you know, um, all of the tools and the power and the compute that Jeff Bezos uses to
Yeah,
terrorize,
Walmart.
Walmart and the bad guys have access to all those same tools, and that
That's
was
right.
true a decade plus ago,
Hmm.
and it is we can't forget that.
No, we really can't. They also have all of our defensive tools in labs, and they're constantly hammering away at them to discover their weaknesses, zero-day exploits, and all that stuff. Um, So yeah, and another thing that when you and I first started, collaborating, we talked about how blue teamers are outgunned, right? And I used to talk about how it was like we're Barney Fife in Mayberry, and the criminals have rolled into town with handheld machine guns, and the sheriff only gave me one bullet, and it's in my pocket.
Yeah, I mean, you're just yeah. Kip, I hate to inform you that there's a lot of our audience who has no idea
I
who
know.
Barney Fife is and what Mayberry is, and just is like,
But
what is
it's
this guy
okay. I
talking
think
about?
they get the idea, right?
Yeah, I
So
think so.
gangsters, 1930s, Bonnie and Clyde, right? And so guess what? This is another watershed event where the criminals now have ray guns and we have, lead bullets. And we can't fire our lead bullets very fast, but they've got ray guns because now they're using AI. We're just so much more outgunned than we were before. And so is this going to lead to a paradigm shift where we are going to say, you know what? it's more risky to deploy DLP in audit mode than it is to deploy it in blocking mode.
It is. No, it totally is.
Right? But who's going to turn that corner first? And how?
Yeah.
I mean,
So okay.
that is
So
going to be a huge change.
it is a huge change, and let's talk more about the defensive side here. So that's one example. What are some specific actions that organizations probably should at least strongly consider taking in response to this threat? And the other thing I want to ask, and this can just be threaded throughout the rest of our discussion on this episode, is, there's going to be a real kind of tendency to wait for a vendor to produce something. And the bad guys didn't wait. They're using as close to the like Claude Code is kind of like, it's almost like the raw metal. Like you can't get much more fundamental of an AI tool than something like Claude Code, right? And my fear is that defenders are going to be like, well, I don't want to mess with Claude Code. Like I'd have to roll my own.
It doesn't scale, right? I've got huge teams of people. How do I scale it, right?
Can't scale. There's no enterprise management. And it's just like, and I just, I don't know.
It just doesn't fit the paradigm. And that's what I mean. It's like blue teamers are going to have to pivot. Now, this brings up the point of what is a hacker? Well, that term used to be used for somebody who was a woodworker, who could take a handheld axe and fashion a chair just by using an axe and something rough-hewn, right? But that could quickly hack away at some wood and make a useful piece of furniture. Didn't look pretty, wasn't smooth to the touch, but you could make a chair very fast.
Is that true, or did you make that up?
No, that's true. That's true, and anybody can call me on that if they want to. So, but the reason why I bring that up is because you just pretty much said it, right? Real cyber attackers who are hacking, right? They're using raw material. They're just out there with raw material and a handheld axe, and they're just figuring out, how do I attack you? Blue teamers, we don't generally do that. We want, IKEA furniture that we can put together by following instructions.
Man, I don't think that's not a fair fight. I hate to say it. I mean, I think you really, I think the blue team. So I think blue teamers need to recapture their hacker spirit if they're going to have a chance.
Yeah. So the takeaway, the first takeaway for people listening to this, if you're a blue teamer, is you cannot wait for perfect readiness before you start experimenting with AI for defense. So you're going to, let's say your organization has a prohibition on it. Fine, build a lab, isolate yourself in the cloud in a lab, and
like I did.
And start doing that.
I'm not a blue teamer. I'm just a lawyer messing with Claude Code on a personal machine. You still have to do it.
If you're a CISO, you need to allocate some of your budget to figure this stuff out, okay? Now, second thing is you need to start small, but you need to start now. You need to pick one use case. It could be like automated alert triage, maybe threat intelligence analysis, maybe taking your vulnerability reports and having AI prioritize which ones should be fixed first, second, third, to contextualize what the scanners are spitting out. Whatever it is, just pick something and then deploy AI in that area, learn from experience, and iterate. You've got to give your team members permission to learn this stuff. You can designate one or two people to go out there and figure it out, but have them come back and teach what they're learning. This is as much about organizational change management as it is about anything else.
It is, and again, the goal is never perfection. It's building that organizational capability. It's a culture. It's another culture shift, right? And
yes,
I think the key to AI is you got to be a fiddler, right? You got to be like, I think in order to get the most value out of it. And I don't know how many times I've said this, but it's been a lot. Like, there's no manual, right? There's no clear, like, these things are so powerful, but they're also so wide open that it's like, you just have to try it.
Yeah, you do. But, I've worked in a lot of blue team corporate environments, and
it's kind of that
not everybody's
concept,
willing to do it.
No, that's what I was going to say. It's kind of, that whole ethos is essentially a hacker ethos, and it can be anathema to a corporation.
Yeah, absolutely, because corporations, they respect predictability, They respect cadence, and a lot of organizations, it's not safe to make a lot of mistakes, and so people are really on guard about doing things where they could make mistakes because they're just
Yep.
concerned they're going to look bad.
Well,
They're not going to get that promotion.
that's why the lab or the cyber shooting range is so important
It
because
is.
you're right. I mean, and to be clear, neither of us are suggesting that people just deploy Claude code on their production
Mm-mm.
data and try to use it for defense. That would
No.
be insane, right?
Yeah, don't do that.
But you
But you
got
can
it.
do it in a lab.
You can do it
Do
in a
it
lab.
do it in a lab. And anyway, so that's the second thing. Now the third thing is I want you to start thinking, how can I enhance my detective capabilities so that I can identify AI-driven attacks? This is not going to be easy, but you want to look for patterns, right? Sustained high request rates, systematic enumeration across your attack surface, rapid testing of multiple exploitation paths. I don't know that it's going to be that the speed of the attack is going to make itself present in your detective capabilities. So, you're going to have to figure out, what does it look like? Now, cyber attackers still want to be quiet. They still want to be in your environment for a period of time to study you. So I don't think they're going to make stupid mistakes like firing AI up and then, attacking you in ways that will be easy to detect using current tools and current techniques. So, you're going to have to innovate and think about it. The best way I can imagine is, again, build that cloud laboratory and use AI to conduct attacks so you can start learning what the signatures of those attacks look like.
Yeah, and I mean those signatures are really important, and you'll
And
just
go
need to
get the
understand.
Anthropic report so you can get into some of these
Oh,
details.
yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, Kip, what about one of my favorite things? What about the incident response plan? Should they revisit those?
Yeah, you're going to have to, right? Because if speed's your new firewall, you can't respond in the old way. You're going to have to respond with speed as well. So we're talking about attacks that can progress from initial access to data exfiltration in hours rather than days or weeks, because they don't need days or weeks necessarily to find what they need to find if they are AI augmented. So we can expect that our response times are going to have to compress, and we're going to need AI to get help with that, but only if we've built it in advance, right? And then I want to reiterate this final thought here is you need to invest in your team's AI literacy.
Oh
And
man, Kip, this actually is probably the single most important takeaway from this entire episode.
I think it is because it's foundational to all the other things that we've mentioned. Now listen, there's AI, there's actually a hierarchy here. There's AI familiarity, there's AI literacy, and then there's actually AI fluency. And those are three very distinct levels of capability. Very quickly, if you're AI aware, you recognize the Copilot icon and maybe you can poke at it and do a few things. If you're AI literate, you can actually get real work done using your AI tools. If you're AI fluid, that actually means you understand that if I want to write something that's compelling, I'll use Claude, Sonnet 4.5. But if I want to do some deterministic programming, then maybe I turn to Codex or I turn to Claude Code. In other words, you understand that different tools have strengths and weaknesses relative to each other, and so you know which one to choose for a given use case.
Yeah, and I haven't. I mean, I think you've mentioned those terms, but I haven't. We actually haven't talked about it. So I guess what would you? Maybe you would add this to fluency, or maybe this is even something past fluency. But what would you call it when someone has progressed to the point where they don't they don't they don't have to think about ways to use AI to please the
Mm-hmm.
bosses. They've already internalized the capabilities
Mm-hmm.
so that it's second nature, and they really are. It really becomes a true co-pilot. I mean, the
Yeah,
name co-pilot had got overused, but it is a good name
it
for
is. Yeah,
what these things
it's very
can
descriptive.
be. It's very
Very
descriptive.
descriptive. Yeah, I would say that's another characteristic of AI fluency.
I think so too. And I just want to, highlight that like the only way to reach AI fluency is the same way you become fluent in a language. You
Hmm.
have to immerse yourself in it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's
you
it.
do.
That's the only way.
Yeah, I mean it's really kind of like playing a musical instrument, piano or something like that. I mean, oh, there's a piano. It has white and black keys. I know what piano music sounds like, right?
Yep, yep,
Versus, hey, I can do scales. I can play Mary Has a Little Lamb, and then on and on and on. Different gradations of competency until you're so fluid that you can play it without referring to sheet music and people are absolutely dazzled by your
yep,
prowess.
yep.
So yeah, so I think of AI in a very similar way as just acquiring a skill.
Yeah, and what would you say if someone says, "But Kip, hallucinations, I just can't trust it." What's your like? How do you respond to that?
Well, there are ways to, first of all, decrease the risk of receiving hallucinations in response, and there are ways to detect hallucinations when they show up. So the fact that the thing hallucinates is not a disqualifier. It's just like working with people. If you're going to delegate a task to a person, you have to set them up for success to minimize the chance that they're going to turn in a piece of work that's riddled with errors. And even the best people need to have their work
Again,
reviewed to
that
make
that
sure.
that that goes to back to what I was saying about, what is the comparison? Like,
Hmm.
and I think there is a risk. I've seen people, even techie cyber nerds, who are resistant to AI because they say, "Oh, it's not trustworthy. Oh, it hallucinates. It's just not worth it." And it's like,
Right.
man, that I'm going to tell you right now, that is wrong. That
Well,
it is it
what's
is
wrong? Their attitude or the
the
fact that it
attitude.
does hallucinate? Oh, yeah, yeah,
No, the
yeah, yeah.
attitude is wrong. It does
Right.
hallucinate. That doesn't make it useless. That
No.
doesn't mean you can ignore it and maintain. Like,
Yeah.
it's too risky to do that.
I mean, I think when I hear people talk like that, I just think, well, they don't like AI as like they have that as a core belief, but then they have to go come up with reasons why they can say they don't like it.
Yeah.
And I get that. That's human nature. People have feelings and then they cast around for justifications for how they feel. That's really common. And I get
Yep.
it. And if that's what you're wrestling with right now, anybody who's listening to this episode, it's okay. But be willing to evolve your attitude towards this because just because you don't like it doesn't mean it isn't going to happen.
Yep.
And if you want to opt out, okay. But I don't think the world is going to stop and wait for you to,
No.
change your mind. It's just going to keep rolling. So this is
Yep.
tough. This is a
It is.
this is a huge transformation, and we have to, individually decide how we're going to participate or if we are.
Yeah. And in our last episode, we did also kind of discuss how the NIST AI risk management framework, um, I mean, at least from our anecdotal experience, the adoption has been limited. And
Mm-hmm.
this instance with the Anthropic report really shows why frameworks alone aren't enough.
Right.
Orgs need practical experience with with AI and AI defense capabilities, and to understand AI offensive capabilities right now. I mean, Kip, there's nothing more dangerous than you know the the unknown unknowns.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
and so many people, if you miss these news items, you might not it might not even you might not you just don't even you won't even know that this is possible.
Yeah, you won't even really recognize the possibilities here. Um, and so by extension, you really can't wait until you've deployed sophisticated AI systems to start thinking about what the possibilities are, right? So if you go back to the Golf Tango Golf 1002 case, right, that we opened up the show with, it shows that AI is already being used against you, against me, against us. So organizations need to be experimenting with AI for defense, whether that's automating alerts at your security operations center, threat detection, vulnerability assessment, incident response. Just pick one and start building some experience. There are lots of great people out there who can clue you in on what the best prompting techniques are. People are figuring this stuff out and they're sharing it. So, there's really no practical reason that I can think of why you can't start doing
Yeah,
this.
and last time we also talked about how AI is changing cybersecurity jobs and job
Mm-hmm.
functions, right? And this case reinforces that point. We see in this example AI handling 80 to 90% of tactical operations. What that means for security teams trying to defend is that they too can become dramatically more effective by delegating repetitive work to AI and focusing their experience on higher value activities. And you know what?
That's right.
That right there, sometime in the last like 2 months, my entire attitude about the future of lawyering in an AI age shifted to something that's much closer to that, much more optimistic. I think
Mm.
I started my most recent law school class, Privacy in Practice, telling the students, oh, it's got to be a tough time to be a lawyer. It seems on bad timing. But
Mm-hmm.
I ended it feeling like, you know what? Actually, I'm a little jealous because you guys are going to have much cooler law careers because of what AI is going to mean you don't have to do,
Mm.
and you're going to be able to focus on the meat of the substance of the law and spend way less time doing things that you only had to do because nothing else could do it, right?
Right.
And it's things like even just like writing billing descriptions, you know collating huge amounts of information, things that humans aren't really necessarily even that good at.
Right.
you know we need to be directing the be creative.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, Kip, this is going to sound bad, but I don't care. I've never considered myself that great with details. Like I struggle
Mm.
sometimes, right? I mean, it took me probably a decade of practice before I was like, okay, I'm really not going to have typos in my work product. Part of that was because I worked in the state, and there is there is a true component of like good enough for government. Like you don't
Yeah.
have time to make perfection, right? And no one's paying you for perfection, so why
Right.
would you do it, right? And it
Yeah.
took me a while to kind of lose that habit. But um, if you're not a detail person, then man, AI is your friend
It
because
can be.
it can be. Because if you're good, it's a new skill, but if you're good with it, you
Yeah.
can use it to do the things you may not like to do. And anyway, I just think we could go on about this, and I think we are coming to what 42 minutes, so I think we're going to have
Yeah.
to close out a little bit before our script ends, but that's fine.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fine. You know what I want to the last thing I want to say is I want to affirm your point that we can augment ourselves with AI, and we can get it to do the repetitive, annoying things that we don't enjoy doing, and we can be very successful with that. I actually realized early on that I get the most success with generative AI when I treat it as a human delegate. And I have
yep.
a lot of history and experience doing that. What I'm observing, though, is that most people are not delegation minded. And so, to the extent that they don't know how to do that or don't want to do that or think delegation is a dirty word, I think they're going to struggle.
They will, and what's really interesting, and I think why that framework, that mental framework for dealing with AI has just gotten more and more real.
Mm-hmm.
Is as you get these agentic systems that are capable of going off and doing work for 20, 30. I think the record is close to 40 hours of continuous
Yeah.
work now. Like
Yep.
that delegation skill is far more relevant. I mean,
It
you could
is.
say, oh, you should, talk to it like you're delegating. Well, that's a little bit challenging if you have to if it's like one prompt at a time,
Yeah.
and like back in the just think a year and a half ago, before even the reasoners were present. Like it would be hard to quote delegate to AI, or was hard to use that metaphor. Now it's it's almost too easy, and it's only going to get easier
I get tons of
and
great work
and more
done by
important.
delegating, by taking a delegation approach.
Yep.
So, anyway, we can talk more about that some other time. That wraps up this episode of the Cyber Risk Management Podcast. So, in our last episode, we explored the strategic implications of AI in cybersecurity, both as a risk that we have to manage and as a tool that we can use to defend ourselves. And today, we extended that conversation by looking at specific evidence that makes those concerns so urgent. So the key takeaway is adversaries are already using AI at scale. So we have to really grab onto this. Speed is the new firewall and adopt these capabilities for defense. I'm glad you were here. I'll see you next time.
See you next time.